All right, hello everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where your time zone is. And welcome to this Syncfusion webinar. And we are very excited to have the one and only James Montemagno over here presenting on the topic, building beautiful hybrid apps with .NET MAUI, Blazor, and Syncfusion. But I guess without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to James to start into the presentation.
So, as Carter said, I'm going to be talking about not only just .NET MAUI, but also Blazor applications and how you can build hybrid applications and reuse all of your existing skills, whether you want to build native apps, whether you want to build hybrid apps, or you want to build just fully web applications with all of the amazing .NET and C# technology and with Syncfusion. So this is a thing that really, really excites me as a mobile developer. I've been a .NET mobile developer for over a decade. Worked at Xamarin, worked here at Microsoft, and it always blows my mind of how we can take our C# and .NET knowledge and bring it to all these new platforms and share code between all of them. Now, I think for me, what has always been extremely important, no matter what I'm building, is that I can hit the target platforms that I want to as a .NET developer. And for me specifically, I want to be able to build beautiful applications across desktops, whether it's Windows or Mac, on my iOS and Android devices, and of course on tablets too. When I think of building native applications, I want to take advantage of the latest and greatest features on these devices, and I want to be able to ship them directly into the App Store so I can take advantage of all of those great things that those platforms allow, such as in-app purchases, the native integrations with geolocation and Bluetooth, and all of that goodness on the different platforms. And today I ship applications across all these platforms. Every single day after work, I hop onto my spin bike in my garage. Not a fancy Peloton, but the fancy $200 one that you can get on Amazon. And I boot up my app, My Cadence, and I start cycling with a little Bluetooth sensor, and I start seeing stuff there. I had later on back whenever I'm doing recordings or I'm live streaming on YouTube, and I boot up my application, My Stream Timer. All my apps start with the name My. I think that's the only way. I don't have to register them at all. And my applications are running everywhere, and I love it because I've been able to build them all with C# and .NET. Now, many developers don't actually know where to start. They're just on their journey. Like, I need to build, desktop and mobile applications. Where do I go? And there are a lot of different technologies out there today, right? We can build applications with JavaScript, with Java and Kotlin, with Swift, with Dart. But for me, I want to build these applications with C# and .NET because I'm a .NET developer. I've been a .NET developer for nearly 20 years, and I love every single thing about it. I love being able to go out, build applications, and use my favorite programming language and my favorite programming tools. So to me, what Microsoft wants to do is give developers a platform to build these native applications, reuse not only the knowledge that they know, but build on top of the amazing .NET community that is 25 plus years in the making. Take advantage of all of those great resources that are available across all of the C# and .NET platforms such as NuGet, Visual Studio, VS Code, and so much more. And that's why the team developed .NET MAUI as the next generation of native multi-platform app development. And .NET MAUI is multi-platform app UI, but it's much, much more, which we'll talk about today. So if I was to summarize .NET MAUI, it's an open source app platform from Microsoft for building modern, performant, and multi-platform iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows apps, all from C# and .NET from a single shared code base. And what's great about this is that it really simplifies cross-platform development. But just because it is cross-platform, the key word here is that it's multi-platform. So if you only need to build a desktop app, you can do that with .NET MAUI. If you only need to build a Windows app, you can do that with .NET MAUI. If you need to build for all the platforms, you can do that with .NET MAUI. Because the architecture looks a little bit like this. Up top, you have access to native platform integrations across iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. This means you have access to the native capabilities of each platform, all from C#. So if there's something you want to access in iOS or Android or Mac or Windows, you can do that all in C#. But the biggest advantage is that there's a single shared code base that you can share across all of your applications, which is your user interface, your resources, your platform features, and business logic as well. So all of your models, view models, RESTful service calls, SQL databases, Azure integrations, Syncfusion UI are all going to be shared across those different platforms. So this enables developers to share nearly 100% of code across all the platforms while still creating beautiful native applications at the end of the day. Now at Dotnet Maui, the team really wants to ensure that developers have a productive environment. They can maximize their code reuse across the platforms, of course, get those platform native integrations and performance, and take advantage of that expansive ecosystem, which I think is ever so important. And that ecosystem includes not only all those amazing NuGets, but everything that Syncfusion offers for developers today. So Syncfusion for .NET MAUI gives you access to tons of great controls and widgets and file format integrations. Whether you're doing data visualizations or charts or graphs or just small little effects, it's really, really easy to go in and start integrating your Syncfusion controls into your .NET MAUI applications. All of these controls leverage C# and XAML user interface with data binding. So if you're coming from a WPF, a UWP, or a Xamarin Forms world, all of this is going to feel extremely familiar, extremely comfortable as well, which is really great. And of course, if you've built with the Xamarin Forms Syncfusion controls, those are also going to feel familiar because they're building them back from the ground up to take advantage of the latest MAUI features, while still, of course, giving you all those things you love, such as all of those great visualizations, and of course, all that data binding and all that goodness. Now, I'm not going to go in and just talk about, .NET MAUI today because I want to talk about how we can blend the worlds together and take advantage of not only the .NET MAUI controls from Syncfusion, but also how we can blend the web world together too. Because when I think about it today, while I'm not a web developer, let me make that very clear. I am not a web developer. My wife in the other room is the web developer of the family. Um, um, there are millions upon millions of web developers. And especially with .NET and ASP.NET Core, there are millions of developers that would also love to be able to build native applications. So when we think about it today, web development with .NET usually starts with ASP.NET Core. When we think about this, it's traditionally on a server, right? We have a server that's running our ASP.NET Core application. And then on the front end, what we have is our code that's usually sometimes in JavaScript. We might be using Angular, we might be using React or Vue on the front end with ASP.NET Core, or using MVC, or using Razer pages, but we're still accessing JavaScripty stuff. Now, with .NET, though, this was the world that was many moons ago, but it has evolved and changed with the introduction of Blazor, which enables a component-based system to build web applications directly in C# that can run without having to write any JavaScript at all. And it runs in multiple modes. So this is great because now we can write C# and .NET on our back end and C# and .NET on our front end as well. So there are two modes specifically with Blazor that are really enticing. One is the traditional server model. And what I love about the traditional server model is that you get the power of the server, obviously, to process all of your C# and .NET code, which means that everything's going to be blazing fast, going to have very small payload that needs to be booted up into the browser when your user navigates to a web page. And all of your Razer components and the component model are all going to be, there on the server. And what happens here is that there's a signal R connection that is used to sort of handle the state between the DOM and the server. So this is really great when you need applications that are super small, that are you need a high scale on, and you need to need to be connected. Many developers today, though, also want and need specifically disconnected applications, and that's where Blazor WebAssembly comes in. And WebAssembly is a technology that is not from Microsoft. It's an open standard that enables other programming languages besides JavaScript to run natively in the browser. So this is supported by a bunch of different languages, C++, Rust, and of course, C#. So what the team enables is Blazor applications to run 100% natively inside of the browser 100%. So there is no server. There is nothing in between you and your user at all, which means when the user goes to your site, the payload is downloaded, and the application is running directly inside the browser. Now, there's some implications here, right? Because that's how fast is the user's computer? How big, do you need your application to be tiny? There's obviously some .NET runtime that's very, very, very tiny. It's just kilobytes, 300, 400 kilobytes. It needs to be, downloaded in your app. But these two scenarios are very flexible and enables you to go back and forth between them. But this is really just for full stack web applications, right? We don't have the ability yet to take it further. But the beautiful part of Blazor in the state that it is that there are tons of beautiful Syncfusion controls for Blazor. So just like we have for .NET MAUI, we have tons of Syncfusion controls for Blazor. And since Blazor has been around for many, many, many years, there are tons of controls. I mean, just a plethora of web controls that you can suck into your Blazor application. And they are stunning: dashboards, calendars, widgets, color pickers, all of these different things. So now you might be thinking to yourself, well, we have Blazor on one end, and that Blazor enables us to build our web applications, right? We can build not only web apps, we can build disconnected web apps, and heck, we can even build progressive web apps too. But we also have .NET MAUI, right? Which enables us to build into the native capabilities, the native shell, the native installers, and ship to the App Store for all these different platforms. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could just merge those technologies together so we could target every single platform that's out there? Well, we can with Blazor Hybrid. And Blazor Hybrid is a brand new piece of technology that enables Blazor to go to more platforms, including .NET MAUI. So this means you can reuse your existing web entire application if you desire in a native .NET MAUI application, and then take advantage of the native capabilities. Or you can mix and match those different parts of UI. So you have some native UI and some Blazor UI as well, which means you can style it however you would like. So let's think about this, right? We now have the advantages of a .NET developer to not only go to every single platform, but we have the advantage that we can reuse our C# and our .NET libraries across web, across client, across AI and machine learning, about anything else that we want to do. We'll still have access in this hybrid world to those native device capabilities. We can mix and match UI. And for me, I've always had this disconnected state with the web team that I've worked with. Sometimes the web team is just me and my wife, right? And mostly it's just my wife, which means I'm building the client apps and my wife's building the web application, and we're shipping features at different times. Now it enables to easily reduce our app development time because we can work closer together with our client team and our web team together to ship features seamlessly across the different platforms. Now, this also is going to enable us to go in and ship directly to the App Store or ship internally for distribution too. So that's something that's super important, is you get to decide how you want to do it. And please have questions come in. I will totally answer them as I go too. So Marcus and Ari, I definitely see it, and John as well. So definitely keep those questions coming. Now, with Blazor Hybrid, you might be saying, well, is there a server? Is there like this big other thing I got to download and install? Like, what are my users actually doing, right? It's a valid question. And you can think of Blazor Hybrid specifically as a third option, if you will, a third way of actually using and developing applications with Blazor, because there is no server and there is no WebAssembly. Because when you are running Blazor Hybrid inside of a .NET MAUI application, it runs 100% natively on the device inside of a single process. And since .NET MAUI applications ship with a highly optimized .NET runtime based on the platform, the Blazor code and execution runs in that same exact .NET runtime. This means there's no HTTP, there's no network required, and there's no browser sandbox because you can easily break into the native capabilities inside the application. I'll make it really clear here that's really important is that the HTML UI that you use is rendered into a web view control. So it's still a web view that's there. It's not like it's transpiling your code into something, magical or something like that. It's all in that one same exact stack. So now our applications look a little bit like this, which is that we have the capability to go not only 100% native if we desire, but we can also go in and start building these hybrid applications that enable us to share more code than ever between our web and our client application. Now, this can be a little, or it can be a lot, or it can be in the middle. So it's up to you. So some great questions here, and let's talk and let's do some actually hybrid development. Because Raul asked specifically here, could I have one code base that supports both web and mobile with Blazor Hybrid? And the answer, absolutely yes, and I'm going to show you today. Additionally, Ari asks, is Blazor Hybrid officially supported in MAUI? Great question. So Blazor Hybrid specifically ships at the same time as .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid are in release candidate today. They just shipped last week. And that means when .NET MAUI goes GA, Blazor Hybrid will go GA as well. So great questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and minimize right now and stop presenting. And I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop over here so we can do that. So I won't be able to see the chat during this time since I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm on one screen, but I'm going to go ahead and do that over here. So let's go ahead and do that and minimize this down and minimize this down. Perfect. Awesome. So hopefully everyone can see my full screen here. It looks like, yes, you can. So perfect. Okay. So the very first thing I want to show you that you need to get started, I'm going to be doing everything on Windows. You can also do development on Mac as well. As of today, I'm using the Visual Studio 2022, which is required, 17.2 Preview 4. That's the latest preview release. Since .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid are in preview or in release candidate, they're still in the preview branch there. So when I tap on Modify, what you're going to see is that I have installed not only the ASP.NET and web development workload, but also this workload here, mobile development with .NET. And that specifically is going to give me .NET MAUI, the preview right there, which is the release candidate. And of course, over in ASP.NET, that's going to give me all of my Blazor stuff, including WebAssembly tools and everything like that. So those are the two workloads that you need to get started. Now, what I'm going to do is show you exactly where you get started and how you can start blending these worlds together and show you a really, really large application as well to share code between all of our different projects. Okay, cool. So when I get started over here, specifically in Visual Studio 2022 and do File, New Project, what we're going to see is that in this dropdown, I have a MAUI section here, and that's going to give me all of my project templates. We have two. We have a .NET MAUI app and a .NET MAUI Blazor app, which is the Blazor hybrid application, and also a class library. So let me first show you exactly what a .NET MAUI application looks like, and then what a .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application looks like. So you can see some of the advantages that you get here. So we're going to call this MAUI app 1. It's in some random location from some other demo that I've done, so that's probably bad. But let's go ahead and spin this up and see if this works. And go to town there. So let's open this. And if you've done any previous work with Xamarin at all, this is going to look very familiar and yet a little bit different. So that's what's going to happen here. So one thing that we're going to notice right away over here as the project loads up is that there is actually only a single project up over here. So we have MAUI app 1. And what we're going to notice is that there are some very interesting things happening over here. We have some resources, we have an app and an app shell and a main page and a MAUI program, and we have these dependencies. Now, these dependencies we can see is showing us that we're deploying for Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows as well. If we drop this down, we can look at our packages, and we have our .NET MAUI packages there, the release candidate. Now, What's really unique, even before I get into the code, is the things that .NET MAUI does for cross-platform development. So I'm going to double tap on the main project, and we're going to go into the CS project. I know everyone loves looking at C# project files, but this one is really cool, okay? So the first thing that we're going to notice here is that we're actually doing this multi-targeting, which is going to enable us to, from a single project, deploy for Android, iOS, Mac, and also on Windows when we're on Windows. We have root namespaces, and then we have these very, very interesting properties. One is use MAUI and one is use single project. So use MAUI brings in all of our different native capabilities and all of .NET MAUI. And then down here, we have some very, very interesting attributes that enable cross-platform properties. So things such as our display name, our application identifier, our version numbers, they're all here in our CS proj. But it gets a little bit better because down here, we can see that actually inside of our CS proj are these MAUI icon and splash screen things. It's very interesting. So what this is an attribute that says, hey, .NET MAUI, when you build my application, please go ahead and include my SVG, which is in my resources folder, which is app icon. This is my app icon foreground file. And then please set the background color to the specific color. And this will automatically generate my iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows app icons automatically. Same thing for splash screen. Here's my image to use, my foreground image. And I would like for you to use this color. And the base size of that image is 128 by 128. And since it's an SVG, it's going to natively compile it into native PNGs for different resources. But it gets even better because there's all sorts of other stuff in here. Here, we can just drop in to our resources/images folder, any image, any PNG, any JPEG, any SVG, and we'll automatically resize it and optimize it to use into your application. In fact, here we're telling it, pull in every single image. And then for this SVG, this is the base size. So you can go in and use a catch-all star, or you can specify a specific SVG image with a base size. And then on top of that, cross-platform fonts and assets as well, which is quite amazing. So you get all that stuff there. Now, when I go back over to this project, we can see that the things that I just talked about are here. So we have fonts, this Open Sans, which is the .NET font. We have images with our SVG image. We also have raw assets, so things like text files, database files, or JSON files that we could just want to throw in there. We can do that too. We have not only our app SVG files, we also have the styles. The styles XAML is really nice. It defines all of the specific default styling for every control in .NET MAUI, which is really cool. So you can easily set a few properties and get light theme, dark theme mode automatically, which is nice. And then if we look up top over here, we'll notice that we have these platform dependencies that also align with these platform folders. So inside of .NET MAUI, we can still access our Android and our iOS code and other platform-specific configurations or things we need to do. So for example, over on iOS, we have an app delegate. It's a .NET MAUI app delegate over here. And what we can see is that it's accessing some native code to create an application. On Android, we have our Android main application. And there's just a little bit of scaffolding here that needs to be set up for Android specifically, which I think is really, really neat. Now, what we have beyond that is we have our MAUI program. And our MAUI program is going to look very familiar if you're an ASP.NET developer to sort of the startup, your startup.cs file, your program.cs file. It uses a builder pattern. So we have our MAUI app create builder. We are using a MAUI app. We're configuring fonts. You can configure lifecycle events. You can configure all sorts of different things inside of here, and it builds it up and returns it. Now, that app that it's creating specifically is this app here. It's very much blank. It just references those styles. And specifically, there's this app shell. And the app shell is defining how our application is structured. Does it have tabs on top, tabs on bottoms? Does it have flyout navigation? Well, in this instance, it has just a single single one here. That's it. Now, what's cool about this is if I go ahead and actually zoom up over here, we can note that inside of our debug menu, when I want to start debugging, I actually can target different frameworks. So here I can go ahead and toggle to Windows, for example, shows me my Windows machine, and I can just hit debug. This is going to build up my application right here for Windows. And if we look at this main page that is booted up here, we're going to see that I have a scroll view, I have some labels, I have a button, I have some images in here, and I'm using all sorts of different native capabilities for accessibility features as well. Cool. Timing is good. Oh, perfect. So here I go. I have a native .NET MAUI application. I have, all my diagnostics, all my windows. I can click on my counter. I can resize the window, right? And it's all a native application that's installed there. If I came in, and I do some hot reloading, let me go ahead and make this bigger so I can see the time. Perfect. We can now see I added a bunch of exclamation marks there, and I could say hello Syncfusion, hit save, and that's going to pull in those hot reload changes for me automatically. Now, if I go ahead and stop the application, if I come down over here, I'm going to go ahead and change to Android. For some reason, my Android emulators are not coming up. Let me go and do. Not sure why my emulators aren't popping up. There we go. My Android debug bridge decided not to boot up, but let me go ahead and just boot this up on Android. I've targeted and I said, hey, please go and compile my Android application, and I would like for you to start my Android emulator. Now, you can go ahead and you can do an Android emulator. You can plug in an Android device. Here, if you're on Windows 11, you can actually use the Windows subsystem for Android, which enables you to debug locally on your machine native Android apps, which is really cool. So you don't even need an emulator. For iOS, you can connect to a Mac and do your remoted iOS simulator. So an iOS simulator will pop up, or you can plug in your iOS device into your Windows machine and debug. As long as you have an Apple developer account, it'll register and do some stuff there. For Mac, you do need to be on a Mac because you need to be on a Mac there. So what's happening over here is the very first time we go ahead and boot this up, it's going to build and compile up our native Android application. It's going to take those changes I just put in there with Syncfusion, and it's going to go through and it's going to, compile up our Android application. The first time this does it, it takes, 30, 45 seconds. But after that, it does an iterative build, so kind of a diff, which means that it'll be a lot faster. So we'll see that here. And of course, I'm sharing my screen and everything's slower because of that. But we can see in the output, things are happening. It's going through this native compilation for Android and all this good stuff as well. So we'll give it a second here to go ahead and boot up. And then we'll go ahead and see it here too. And while that's happening, there's this button, this counter. So if I actually look at the code behind here, we can see that I'm just doing standard kind of click counters, things like this. Now in the default template, there's no MVVM or data binding all set up for you, but of course, all that stuff is supported and will work out of the box. I've done many videos on the .NET YouTube and on the standard YouTube, and there's great docs for all this stuff as well. Okay, so it's found the emulator, so hopefully it should boot up here. There we go. There's our splash screen over there. And there we go. Hello Syncfusion. I can click on this and boom, we have our application up and running. Native controls, native capabilities, native SVG assets, icons, all that stuff is all built in right there, which is really cool. And you can see all my app icons there from all my applications that have been built up, which is quite nice. So that is some of the great optimizations and enhancements inside of .NET MAUI. And the great part here is all of the stuff that I'm talking about, all the assets, all the platform integrations, all the capabilities are also available inside of Blazor Hybrid. So here's what I want to show you is I want to go over and I'm going to go ahead and open up a Blazor Hybrid application. So this is file new, and I just did that Blazor Hybrid, and this is what you get. So you're going to get the exact same single project. So we have all of our dependencies that are here. The main difference is that you're going to get this ASP.NET Core Components WebView MAUI. You'll see there's another little bonus nougat in there that we're going to use here in a second. So what's inside of here should look very familiar if you've done any Blazor development ever in your entire life. But in the templates for the Blazor applications, there specifically is like a weather forecast service. So here's like the weather, and it's going to show you if you know how to get a forecast asynchronously. There are some pages, so there's an index. And now we're inside of HTML and Razer, so we have our index/page. We have a hello world, welcome to your new app. There's, survey prompt component over here. There's a counter component. So here's the counter. So we have an H1 tag, a button. It's using Bootstrap for styling over here. And here I'm actually writing in my code inside of my page, right? So inside of this, all of my C# code is being executed on .NET, which means there's no JavaScript that is needed here to not only increase this counter, but also to do the data binding here to update the p tag here, right? This paragraph. We also have a fetch data. So again, we're just iterating. We're doing some threads here. We have a for each. So all this is Blazor code with Razer binding and all this good stuff. And all of my specific C# code is being executed there. But if we note over here in our platform folders and our resource folders and all this stuff, we have all of our Android stuff here. We have our Mac stuff that's over here. And we have our Windows stuff as well. We also have fonts that we can configure, images, raw assets, and this will be if you want to tap those into the native controls. If you want to just use other things, you have a dub root folder. So you have CSS, you have Bootstrap, OpenIonic, you have your fave icons, you have your HTML here, imports, all this stuff that's coming in, and a shared folder for main layout, navigation, survey prompts, all this stuff as well. So let's see how this application is structured because it is a little bit different. We do have a main application over here. So we have some resource stylings, things like this. And when I have my app, I have a new main page that's being created. And that main page is quite different than our .NET MAUI application. It's still in XAML over here. So we still have our content page. We have background color over here, which is this color here. We have our normal stuff, but we're also using specifically this web component, which is called a Blazor web view. This one here is pointing to our index.html. It has a root component, and specifically that root component is main, which is the main part of the application. If I look at our MAUI program file over here, what we're going to see is that this is the same builder pattern that came over from .NET MAUI, but it has a few other things in it. It not only configures fonts, but it also adds this MAUI Blazor web view. And it registers singletons. You could do transient. It has all the dependency injection, IOC, all that stuff that you would know and love. So what's really cool about this is that when I boot up this application over here on my Android emulator, we're going to get a native Android application. It's going to go through the same exact build process that my .NET MAUI app did because it is a .NET MAUI application, right? So when I go ahead and boot this up, I'm going to get my application loading up. But here I get my Blazor application, right? So I have my counter over here. I have my fetch data. And this is an example where the entire Blazor application is hosted inside of a .NET MAUI shell, which is quite cool right here. All right. So that is something that is really unique, but we can go further. So for example, inside of, let's say, this counter page, we wanted to access some native capabilities. We wanted to check to see if I have internet. So here I could say, maybe, let's do this. Let's add another button here. And I'm going to say check internet. And I'll say check internet here. And what I'll do is I'm going to do another private void. And I'm going to call it check internet. Right. And now, how would I check the internet over here? I would probably have to find some JavaScript library or something else out there. Well, not with .NET MAUI applications because they include not only access to native capabilities, but they also offer access to cross-platform integrations. So for example, I can come in and say MAUI or Microsoft .maui .networking, for example, and I can get access directly to connectivity. I could come in and say, let me get access to devices. And here I get access to the battery, display information, flashlight, haptic feedback, sensors, all that goodness. So let's go in and let's just say networking dot connectivity dot, and I'm going to say current, and I'm going to say, let me see if I have, move this out of the way, dot whatever the current network access is. So I'm going to grab that here. So let's go ahead and pull this out here. I'm going to say var access equals this. I'm going to say if, and then I'll say var has internet. I'll say access equals network access dot internet. So there's a bunch of different internet things here. So now I can say, maybe let's pop up a box, like a display alert, right? Now you might be thinking, well, I'm going to invoke some JavaScript. I'm going to invoke a display alert. No, you don't need to do that. Because what we can do is we can actually come in, and I'm going to mark this as async. We're going to await on this. I'm going to say Maui app4 dot app dot current dot main page, and I'm going to say display alert. Built in to .NET MAUI is native capabilities to not only display an alert, an action sheet, and a prompt to enter something. So we're going to display alert. We'll say internet check. And here I'm going to say, let's do this here. Let's move this up out of the way. I'll say internet, is there internet? Question mark. And then I'm going to say has internet, right? There we go. And then I'll just say, okay. All right. So now this gives me the capability of writing not only my Razer code that I know and love, but also accessing native capabilities directly inside of my Razer code here, which is quite cool. So let me go ahead and boot this up. All right. Oh, it's already gone. It's there, right? So now I have a counter. I have the check internet. And just like that, it says, is there internet? True. Now I should be able to come over and toggle this into airplane mode. When I check internet, now it is false. Right? If I put it back over into airplane mode again, take that off, I can go ahead and, add a breakpoint here, just like you would expect. Or maybe it's on the wrong one. That one. That should work. I don't know why it's not working, but oh, it's because I toggled on and off the internet. The debugger breaks. Funny. That does happen when you toggle on and off the internet. The debugger does break, so that's totally my fault. But yeah, you should be able to come in and go in and then check out the different stuff here. So here's the fetch counter, and there we go. Now we hit our breakpoint. We can step through, and now we have our native internet access, which is great. So now what this means is that when I run this application over on Windows, for example, let's check that out. I'm going to toggle this over to Windows. I'm going to debug it on my Windows machine. And what we're going to see is the same exact Blazor application with all this new code that I wrote over here. And it'll check my internet access here locally. So I'm not going to toggle off my internet because that would be bad. I'll disconnect, but we should see what it looks like over here on Windows. So let's go ahead and boot this up. There we go. All right. Here we go. We have our counter over here. I've checked internet, and we get a native WinUI 3 pop-up because we're using WinUI 3 for our integration. So your Windows applications, those native integrations, are going to look and feel native because they are native at the end of the day. But we have all of our Blazor stuff here. I can click, 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 and I'm good to go, right? Which is really nice. Now, let's say I want to start using, all of the amazing Blazor controls from Syncfusion, for example. Well, what would I need to do? Well, what would you do in Blazor? Well, you would follow the Blazor, specifically WebAssembly instructions to get it set up inside of your .NET MAUI application. So let's say I wanted to, add some charts. Let me say, I just want a chart. Give me a chart. Give me a thing, right? So here's what I've done is I've installed the Syncfusion Blazor charts over here. I could update it, I guess. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's here. But here it is. I've added that into my .NET MAUI application. Now, I'm installing it here into my .NET MAUI application, but what I'll show you is that you can create a shared Razer class library that would host all of your components to be shared across web and your application here. So, okay, we have our charts control because that's the one that the documentation told me I needed. Well, what else do I need to do? Well, I'm going to need to come in to my index.html here, and I'm going to add the things that the documentation told me to do. So we have our MAUI CSS, our app CSS. I'm going to add the Syncfusion Bootstrap 5, the Syncfusion Blazor min.js that's needed here, and we're good to go, right? Got that there. I'm also going to come into my imports. I'm going to add using syncfusion.blazor, so that's there too. And then I'm also going to come into my MAUI program over here. And what I've done, if you caught it earlier, you may have seen it, is I added the same exact code that you would add into your normal Blazor application. And since they use the same infrastructure, all that stuff is the same. So here I add Syncfusion Blazor, and I set the options to ignore the script isolation, and I'm good to go. So I have everything that I need there in just a few lines of setup. Now, what this is going to enable me to do is, let's say, like, get rid of all this stuff here. And then what I could do is, I don't know, take some sample code right here. We're just going to copy that from a markdown file. There we go. I'm going to shove it in here. So here's what we have. We have specifically our Syncfusion Blazor charts. We have an SF chart control with our chart primary access, our x-axis, y-axis, our legend settings, our chart series, and we just have all of our C# code down here. So boom, I have everything I need. It's going to do it in a column series. It's just a little bit of code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm simply going to go over and just start debugging on my Windows machine over here, right? And what this is going to give me is the advantage of blending in and bringing in the Syncfusion control. Of course, I haven't set my license, so I get that little pop-up, but look at this, boom, I get that right there. It's going to resize, it's going to do everything that I want, and I get those nice animations, everything like that from the Blazor WebView control. And even this, if I shrink it down, we can see that everything is reactive, just like we would expect inside of our application. So nothing is different, right? That's kind of cool. Like if you're building Blazor apps, you can take all that knowledge, put it over here. And yeah, there's some XAML. Yeah, you can blend in. You can make this more native. You can do a bunch of stuff in here, but you have access to start playing around and tapping on this today. And the same thing's going to work. If I bring this over to Android, let me go ahead and boot this up over on Android, just like we saw before. We're going to get the same exact application, the same exact SF chart that's there, 100%. We're going to see it running natively here. So let's go ahead and get this popped up. Again, it's going to boot and compile much, much faster. The team's done amazing work there. Boom, we're good to go. Now, I could, of course, style it. I could do a whole bunch of other stuff inside of here. I can blend and mix and match these worlds together, and we're good to go. Now, I also want to talk about here that I've put the entire app inside of here, right? The entire app. If I wanted to, I could come back into, my main page. And instead of just, accessing local, I could come up and I specifically could, do pages, and I could say, give me access to my pages. And instead of putting the entire app, I could put maybe just, for example, the index over here, right? So what this would enable me to do is just put just a single Blazor page and component inside of it without the entire app shell and all the stuff that's in there. And this means I could navigate from this main page to a detail page, navigate inside of my Blazor application or not. So now we have none of that Chrome, that stuff in here, but we have our Blazor controls from Syncfusion right there. So let's see how we could actually build a real application with this thing, okay? So I have another application, which is our .NET podcast application. And specifically, this is a web application and additionally a mobile application and a hybrid application with Blazor 2, with .NET MAUI, with Blazor, and with ASP.NET Core. So what I want to show you first is on my machine, I have locally running in Docker my backend services that I need here. I have a database running, storage, and API controller. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you that this is broken into a few different pieces. So the first thing is that there's a Blazor server app and a Blazor, an ASP.NET Core server app and a Blazor app here. So we can see here, this is a page. It has an index page. It has some startup stuff here. And then this is actually broken into pages. So we have pages of our application and components, and there's different Razer class libraries here. So let me just go ahead and start this up here. And this is a Blazor app that is embedded into a ASP.NET Core Razer page application. So we can see what it kind of looks like here. And this is all open source on the Microsoft GitHub, and I'll have a link to my specific fork of it, so you can kind of give it a look. But it's a really beautiful application as well. So here, this is the ASP.NET Core Razer application. So here it's showing me some podcasts, what it's going to be available on. It's amazing, and I can sign in. And this specifically is my Blazor application. So this is 100% Blazor here. I can go in, I can start listening to a podcast. That's the podcast I do, which is cool. So you can listen to that, which is rad. Cool. We can add things to our like listen later queue, which is really nice. And we can toggle on different screens and things like this too. But here's what's cool. There's this listen history thing. And this is actually a control that is only right now in Blazor Syncfusion controls. And I'm a huge podcast listener. And I wanted to add this kind of listen history of like when I listen to podcasts. So I brought in this control from Syncfusion, and I plugged in my listening data here. So we can see like in evenings is basically when I listen to a lot of podcasts almost every single day besides the weekend. On the afternoons, it's a little bit, maybe, some ride home stuff. In the morning, hardly anything. I got to crush some code, right? So let's look at how I brought that into this application. So it's going to be running over here. So let's go ahead and do this here. I'm going to go into my components, my pages, and specifically my settings page. So I have components and I have pages. So this is pretty cool. So this is my page. It's /settings. So we can actually see that when I went here, I'm at /settings on my local host. And then I have all of my normal stuff here. And then I have this component, which is called a listen heat map. And that component is in my components. So if I go into my components and I go into my profile, I have this listen heat map. Same exact stuff here. So here I have my SF heat map. I have all my titles, my settings, my palette, and then I have all of my data. It's just kind of hard coded here, but you get the idea. And this loads up this data, right? So this is a shared component. This is a Razer class library, nothing special. And this is where I add my Syncfusion Blazor heat map. Now, I, of course, configure it locally in my different applications, but it's all here running just as I would expect. But here's where it gets really cool. So what I'm going to do is open up the .NET MAUI podcast application. Now, this application is an application that uses 100% of .NET MAUI, but also uses a little bit of Blazor in there for a few different things. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And what we're going to see in this world of blendability, right? What can we blend together in our application is we're going to note that we can use all Blazor or just a little bit of Blazor, right? So that's what's really important here. So let me go ahead and load this up. There we go. Perfect. And what I want to show you is that, like I said earlier, we have not only our .NET MAUI application with all of our XAML pages here. We have all of our XAML pages, all of our converters, all of our stuff here. We actually have some Razer code inside of here, but we also have the components, which means any of those components, the player, the listen together mode, events, all this other stuff is shared 100% with my .NET MAUI application. All right. Now here's what I've done. is inside of the profile page that I created. We have tons of XAML, just like we would expect, but we have a blend of not only our native controls, but also our web controls too. So here's our grid. I'm doing, some styling here. We have listen time. We have a Blazor web view that's here. And this is my listen heat map coming from specifically my my components, my Razer component library up there. So now when I boot this up, I go into my profile. Let me go ahead and tap this here. It's probably mad at me about something. Let's see here. This should boot up. Go. Just recompile. Let's see. There's our Windows app. Toggle this over to dark mode. There we go. I've added this little profile button here. Here we go. And what we can see is that I have specifically my profile, and I have that same exact view that I have earlier on my web app, right? So it's the same exact listen history that I have between my Windows app, my Android app, if it finishes the build, and my web application, right? So I'm in control here of how much or how little I want to use inside of this application. So this is really, really cool, blending the world of web and native controls and native shells and all that stuff together. Let's see if this thing is going to boot up or not. Let's see if I'm going to launch it again. Go to the profile page. Just launched the other day. Let's see. There's our splash screen. It's probably mad because probably something is broken. I probably broke it. Definitely broke something. So it's going to compile here. Let's see. Give it a second to compile. There, but we kind of get the exact same view, right? Where this is my native application up and running here. There, let's see what's going on with Android. There we go. It's compiling up, deploying, and this should work. Let's see. Up, up. Come on. There we go. .NET pods. Initializing, go to profile, and now we get, just like we'd expect, our listen time, and we get our same exact controls over here. I can rotate it, right? It's going to go ahead and rotate for me. I can go ahead and scroll because I'm inside of a scroll view, and I get the same exact controls that I would expect, right? Which is really, really cool. So blending those worlds together, which is oh so cool. All right, let me go ahead and wrap this up here. Let me go and pull this down. Go back and present in Teams. Let's see here. Boom. See if this will work. All right, let me resume. Perfect. Okay, cool. So here's what we've seen. We've seen that as .NET developers, we have choice. We have power, right? We have the ability to fully create full reach with Blazor, right? We have a full website, progressive web app. We can do everything on the web. We also have the power of creating native applications with .NET MAUI 100%. And we have the ability to blend those worlds together to create hybrid applications. We have the capabilities of doing as much or as little one way or the other, but we can build everything in C# and .NET and combine all of our favorite controls from Syncfusion no matter what world or what choice you want to have. So you can choose web, native, or hybrid with Blazor and .NET MAUI. You can reuse all of your Syncfusion controls from Blazor, or of course, the native .NET MAUI controls as well. You can mix and match UI as you saw. You can get the previews today in Visual Studio Preview. It's going to be releasing very soon into GA. And here are some links where you can get up and started. Not only the .NET MAUI GitHub repo, we have documentation on Blazor Hybrid, and of course, the .NET Podcast app. It's on my GitHub. It's a fork of the mainline one. You can go there. I have some other demos like you saw here too, which is Syncfusion, if you just type that into the box. So I'll let everyone take a screenshot of that really quick. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up here. I'm going to answer some questions. I know we have a few minutes left. I'm fine going over for a few minutes there. Let's talk about this here. All right. Oh, and I have this one, the Blazor Hybrid Syncfusion. In fact, I think you can click on those actually in here in this cool thing. So it's there. So you can do that. I can draw on it. That's cool. Awesome. So I'll let everyone take a screenshot of there too. Awesome. Very cool. All right. So great one. Awesome. Cool. So let's go ahead and do rapid fire here really quick. And of course, you can follow me everywhere on the internet or on my YouTube as well. Would super appreciate that. I'm putting out videos every day. I just put one out today. Ari asked about a project called Blazor Mobile Bindings. That is something completely different. So that was an experiment that was about bringing like Razer syntax to Xamarin Forms. So that's still an experiment, and they're probably going to bring it into experimental form in .NET MAUI. But that is different. The Blazor hybrid also works with WinForms and WPF as well. So it actually is an entire platform that works not only with .NET MAUI, but also WinForms and WPF. Dan asks, can you create a Windows XE? So you can do it into the Windows App Store. It's a WinUI 3 application. So the same deployment model works there as well. And yes, this is going to be available on the YouTube. Ari had to run. Answered your question. Sorry about that, Ari. Cool. Carter answered that. Cool, cool, cool. Bum. Okay, the one thing, yes, correct. As of today, John was asking if there's Linux support. There is no Linux support for binaries today. Of course, with Blazor, you can create progressive web apps. There is a community supported branch for Linux support, but the team, is working towards GA. So the primary platforms they're targeting for .NET MAUI is iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows, and of course, tablets as well. Will you be able to remove the title bar in WinUI 3 with WinUI? If WinUI allows it, then yes. Can I access external, Marcus asks, external database with hybrid on this? Yeah, of course, you can access a database. Probably through a web API would be what you would do. You could directly connect to a database, but that is always a terrible idea. Let's see. Yeah, standard web request, HTML there. Is real-time capability with SignalR available in .NET MAUI? Of course. Yes. In fact, you can. So with .NET MAUI, you can use either the C# SDK, or if you're doing Blazor hybrid, you can use the Blazor SDK as well, which is cool. Yeah. Let's see. Hector asks, is there a way to migrate Xamarin Forms applications to .NET MAUI? Yes, there's documentation on it. There's going to be a command line tool that will also help some of the upgrade modernization there as well. Of course, your Xamarin Forms applications will be supported for a while. Victor asks, do you recommend new apps with .NET MAUI? Yeah, I think right now for me, it's release candidate. There's still bugs that are in there. There's bugs in every product, obviously. So some things you might have to work around temporarily, and there's going to be more release candidates before GA. I'm sure even at GA there'll be bugs. There's always bugs, right? So it just depends on if the bugs impact you or not, and if there's a way to work around. For me at this point, yeah, all new apps that I create will be .NET MAUI based, and then probably over the next year I'll migrate my Xamarin Forms apps over. To me, it's more about are the dependencies that I'm using ready or not, right? So are the controls, are the libraries, are all the stuff supported that I need? You know what I mean? Yeah. See if I hit any other questions. I think that might be it. What about car TV applications? Now, not anything like that. You do have access with .NET to create tvOS applications and technically CarPlay applications, but you'd be doing that with the native UIKit integrations that you would be building, not with a cross-platform UI. Yeah. Bill Joseph says, looks great. Asks about Azure AD B2C with .NET MAUI Blazor. Any samples of handling security for like OAuth stuff? Let's double check the documentation. Basically, what you would want to do for OAuth and login flows is you're not going to follow a standard web flow. You're going to follow and use like the Azure AD B2C library for C# and .NET. Because that's going to have the native Android and iOS integrations that you would need or that are required for login. Joseph was asking about authentication. Cool. Well, I hope that everyone enjoyed the session. Of course, it will be available later. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on any platform. I super appreciate it. And I think that's it. I think we did it.
Yeah, I think that was great. Awesome. Thank you so much, James. And as James said, thank you all for joining us as well. Yeah, I did add the link to our Syncfusion YouTube channel where you'll be able to find the recording for today. And also, as James mentioned, he has plenty of videos on his channel as well. So please go ahead and check all of those out. But I
Awesome.
hope you guys, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
But
I just said thanks.
oh,
Thanks for
nice.
having me.
Nice. Well, everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon. All right. Bye, everyone.